Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Daha Radiology, and today we're going to be talking about tips to ace your carms exams, which are also tips for any types of interviews for residency programs. Carms is specific to the Canadian residency match system, but this also applies to any radiology residency or residency in general. So let's get started. A lot of you have been asking about specific tips for interviews and how to prepare for residency carms applications in general. And so I thought that this would be a good video to talk about the interview tips that I have experienced myself and others have told me about that I found helpful for doing interviews and getting ready for your interviews. I know it's that time of year where people are getting interview invites and they're preparing for their interviews that will happen at a whole bunch of different programs, whether it's radiology or not, and it's very hard to find resources to help prepare you for that. And there aren't many things that really can prepare you for what's to come, because it is a whirlwind of different types of questions, emotions, and environments. Now, it is a little bit different from when I did my interview tour, because COVID has now made things online, but some of the principles still apply, and some of the differences and preparations that you would need to do your interviews still apply. So we're going to talk about those things in today's video. We're going to talk about the types of interview questions that are commonly asked. These are things that, any generic interview should probably give a variation of or ask a variation of, and things that are good to prepare for because there's a high likelihood of you getting asked that. We're going to talk as well about the types of formats to answering those questions. This is going to be very variable for the person and how you feel you are best at communicating. I'll tell you what works for me and a couple of different variations, and you can take what you will from that. We're also going to talk a little bit about, what are things to prepare for in an interview and what you can control versus things that you kind of have to just get used to doing on the fly, and as well as things that you may have to improvise through the interview process. And then finally, a couple of study tips, and that may sound bizarre in an interview video, but there are some things that would be helpful, especially in radiology, to study for before going on your interview tour. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's talk a little bit about the types of questions that are asked in radiology interviews. Remember that I am focusing on the carms applications, but from my colleagues that went to the States and from many different resources, a lot of these suggestions will be similar regardless of where you do your interview. So in radiology, a big component of, why what the interview entails is, why do you want to be a radiologist? Of all the subspecialties that you could have chosen, why radiology? And really your application should have gotten you this far anyways. It shows like your interest, your research, your elective time has been towards radiology, but they want to also know that this isn't just some backup for you, or this isn't just some why you want to be a radiologist as your future career, and are you in it for the right reasons, for example. Now, not to say that there are right reasons for doing radiology, but they want to make sure that your red flags are taken care of. And so with any interview that you do that's a professional one, that's going to be something that everyone is on high alert for. So with that being said, a very specific question that most residents get at least once during their interview tour is, why do you want to do radiology? And that question is very vague and very broad for a reason, because everyone has different reasons for wanting to do something. Some people take a creative route and say they're really passionate about, photography and images and technology, and then that led them towards radiology because it combines all of those things. Some people take the medical route and talk about how, in medicine, these are the detectives and the people who figure out the mystery, and that's kind of what you like to do, and put puzzle things together. Some people say a more honest route and go with, I don't want to have patient interactions, and I don't really, value the reward that patients give when, you help with their care. So they're all hold bit different parts of this, and we'll talk a little bit about that on how to answer a question in the next section. But that is a very common question that people will ask, and they'll look for certain criteria that show that you've been inspired in some way, shape, or form, or you've at least thought about this and you're sure about the career choice. One of the biggest things that I find in residency programs nowadays is that, the idea of wanting to be a specialist, a surgeon, a radiologist, a pathologist, whatever it may be, is really easy to kind of confabulate in your head when you're in medical school and you've had limited exposure. But once you get there and you're doing it full time and it's going to be the rest of your career, then you start to really think about things, and you may have second doubts. So they want to know that you've analyzed it and you've kind of come to that conclusion on your own. And have actually thought about that. So make sure you're clear about it. Make sure that you have some sort of passionate response, in the sense that you have thought about it and you have clear reasons why you want to do radiology over other things. Because you may have an interest in, figuring out the puzzle, but that's also involved in internal medicine and pathology and radiology. So you have to kind of cater that towards why you really wanted to do radiology. Another common question that people ask is, the standard medical interview question of, tell me about yourself. Now, this is a chance for you to really take it in any direction you want. Sometimes this is asked at the start, sometimes it's asked at the end. Kind of cater it towards how you feel the interview is going. If you feel the interview is kind of like a laid-back style, you're kind of talking with people that are really interested in outside of medicine things, take it that way and kind of talk about yourself outside of medicine. Make yourself human. Make yourself someone sociable and approachable and someone who's interesting, right? Because that's what makes you stand out from the other applicants. And something that I can remember is, someone who's saying, hey, like, I have this side hobby of whatever, and it's actually something that I really am, looking forward to do in the future, and something that's kind of kept me through, undergrad and and medical school, that I really enjoy doing. And when you see someone talk about something passionate, you can tell. And that's really what I'm trying to get at here, is that when you're talking about this particular part of your life, you need to sound genuine. And the only way to do that is to actually talk about something that you are passionate about. Now, you might ask me, what if I'm not? What if I'm not passionate about anything in particular? And is it going to look bad if I just kind of come up with this scripted answer? Well, the best advice I have for that is to come up with a story. A story not fabricated, I'm saying, but a story that you can kind of live to the people who are listening to you by describing what happened during that time. In 2016, I had this experience where I went to this volunteer camp, or this leadership camp, and we did this activity where it was this skill building activity. It really put us together in a group of strangers. We talked it out. We got to really get to know each other. We were put in awkward situations really quickly and really had a chance to kind of grow as a group. That is my reason for, being a leader and blah, blah, blah. Like, these are scripted answers in a way where you have a story that actually helps to tell the interviewer what you're trying to come across, by also formalizing in a way in your head, like, this is the story I'm going to give for leadership experience. This is the story I'm going to give for medical experience. This is the story I'm going to give for my sports experience, right? So when you have a story attached to something, you can kind of put together your response based on the events of that story, and it makes you human. It makes you someone memorable. It's like, oh yeah, that was the guy who did professional soccer, or that was the girl who was a national swimmer, or that was the guy who did Olympic rowing. These are things that I'm going to remember as an interviewer, and not so much the fact that you said, oh yeah, I was a leader, I was an innovator, and all of the CanMeds, highlighted words that people tend to want to talk about in their interview. That being said, those are still things that you want to highlight, and you want to have a structure, and we'll talk about that in the next section of formatting your answers. Another question that radiology tends to try and ask is, why our program? So radiology is a specialty that's competitive. It varies year to year, but there are some years that are incredibly competitive and some that are not. But when it is competitive, the programs really look for people that fit their kind of batch of residents, as well as who would fit into their type of learning environment. So in Canada, there are many different schools. In Ontario, there are many different programs, and they're all vastly different. At Western, where I come from, our residency program is pretty tough on call, but its support system has developed over the years and has become quite a positive environment for people to learn on call. It's heavy and it's quick, and it makes you a really strong radiologist by the end of it. There are other programs that have less of a focus on call and may be more into research or subspecialty exposures. Now, for the sake of this video, I don't think it's a good good thing to go into each of those residency programs across the city. If you want to know more, comment or message me privately. And if you're asking about a specific program, I can give you my 2 cents about it. But I can only speak for what I've experienced, and it's really kind of word of mouth, right? That you hear from what the other residency programs are like as well. So when talking about why their program, you really want to highlight things that are specific. Now, it's really easy to just look at their website and just give some generic statement, but that's usually not what anyone's ever even thought about, right? No one's reading the site description and saying, oh yeah, like that resonates with me. It's like, yeah, like you want to know that, Western's associated with Robarts, for example, a research institute, and that would be a cool thing if you are interested in, research and you did some looking into. But, you also want to know the residents themselves. You want to say, like, I know that they're a close-knit group of people. I did my elective here at X hospital. You want to be specific. You said, I worked with these people. They showed me really cool things in these subspecialties, and they were offering their advice and their teaching, and they gave me a lot of opportunity. These are things that I cherish in a residency program, and for those reasons I want to come here. You may have a reason to stay in the actual city. That is a valid reason to come to a residency program, and it's actually a really important one. So if you have family, if you have ties to that city, then it's important to make that clear, because when we're ranking an applicant, we also want to know what are the likelihoods of them actually coming here and staying here. And those are, to be honest, one of the strongest features of a resident, because we can be assured that, hey, this resident's actually very much considering coming here because X, Y, Z, and we're actually going to rank them a little bit higher than we had anticipated, because we think that they'd be a good resident and probably a safe pick to put higher on our match list. It's a pretty common actual strategy to residency and to the interview process, so I highly recommend it. So the rest of the types of answers can be very variable. The other answers, the other questions are, more so to do with variations of radiology. So, across the country, people might ask you questions like, what do you do in your free time? How are you a strong learner? Are you someone who is, involved in extra curricular activities, and what are they? And they also kind of can be even more sub-select than that. So sometimes they try and throw you off a little bit and say, show me something, or, describe to me a moment in time where you felt this. And there are always, curveballs in any type of interview setting that you have to be prepared for. The point being is always make it as a conversation. Take a second to respond. You don't have to have a perfect answer every time, but I strongly recommend having stories that have a whole bunch of different types of answers to a question. And when I mean the stories, I mean, just as I had said before, where they're real life things that you've experienced that you can mold and shift into a way that can be described, into a leadership experience, or a time of difficulty, or a time of happiness. And I find truly that stories help quite a bit to help, to convey your points and to humanize you. So that in itself, I think, is most of the different types of generic questions that you can prepare for. The rest are just things that you have to kind of be comfortable answering on the spot. And that's really half the battle of interview. My best advice for that is to practice talking with someone, whether it be on video conference or in person, is to talk to them, talk about different subjects, talk about different questions that you think you may get asked, and just actually say those answers in a formatted way to someone in the flesh, because there's no better way to practice that than to actually do it. When the other person tells you, hey, you said a lot, you said like a lot, you started a lot, you didn't have the best example, or it didn't really sound passionate, take that advice, do it again, over and over and over again. So all in all, those are the types of questions, and we'll go on now to the format of some of the answers. So the format of answers is something that I think people overlook. So if you just start talking, you're going to forget a lot about what have I said, what haven't I said, are they bored of my answer, have I actually answered the question, and does this, can I end this in a proper fashion? And so the way that I've always taken interview questions, even in medical school, is to try and give an outline of what you're about to say. So, you're going to give a structured answer in the sense of, your first sentence is going to be, this is what I'm going to talk about. The next couple of sentences is going to be breaking it down into 2 to 3 points, maybe keeping a story in there to help keep the attention of the audience, and then concluding with a statement of reiterating what the question was and your answer in summary. So that kind of gives you this sandwich type of answer that helps guide where you're going with things and how you're going to kind of wrap them all together at the end to make a solid, strong point. That's kind of the way that I answer questions. And it's really helped, especially when you're thrown off guard, because you never know when someone might ask you something and you just have no idea what to say. If you follow your structure and you follow the type of format that you've always been practicing for, it may come to you and it might feel more natural. Other ways to answer a question is really, how do you as a person talk normally? So are you a shy person? If that's the case, then you may want to structure your answers a bit heavier, more scripted in the sense, because you know that you are going to not be the person to kind of go on off a ramble or on a passionate to kind of a storyline or whatever. So you want to have a bit of more structured answer that you're going to want to be prepared for, because it'll show in your shyness that, hey, like, is this person actually interested? And they're going to start questioning, hey, is this person just kind of faking it, or are they actually shy? So you want to have a confident answer even though you're a shy person. It's not a big deal if you are, but you need to have that confidence in your answer as well. Are you someone who's really outgoing and really can just talk their mouth off? If that's the case, then try and be a bit more reserved, in the sense that, hey, like, I should say things that are impactful and powerful, and try not to stutter and mutter all the time, and kind of focus on 1 or 2 points instead of focusing on 10 points, because it'll make the person lose their focus. And then finally, the last kind of tidbit of answering questions is try to limit yourself when answering a question, and to not go into many different branches of the question, because they may have follow-up, they may have another kind of interruption that they want to talk more about that's more interesting to them, and you want to give space and ability to do so, and it really makes a conversation, gives you a chance to breathe. It gives you a chance to take a second and think about, hey, is this going well or not? Should I change directions? And it gives you a chance to analyze how they perceive what you're saying. You may be surprised at what they're interested in. So you kind of want to take a step back sometimes and figure out, hey, okay, so they're actually interested in this part of my answer, which was, the story or the random quirk that you talked about. So it can be very surprising. All in all, those are the kind of answers. Things to prepare for in a interview setting, obviously, is the whole question and answer type of thing. But what I actually want to dig deeper into is some of our programs, especially in radiology, and this applies to a lot of different specialties as well, will ask knowledge-based questions. This isn't everywhere, and this isn't common for everything, but it's something that you should be prepared for. During your electives and your kind of time to prepare for your interview, try and brush up on basic anatomy, basic physiology, whatever that specialty that you're going into. And if it's in radiology, you can just brush up on some really basic radiology type of images. And these are things that, even as a medical student, you'll probably recognize already, but it's something just to not be thrown off of. Know your basic anatomy of whatever chest x-ray, CT of the head, or, very basic x-ray of whatever part of the body, the classic elbow or ankle or bones of the hand, like these are basic concepts that you probably already know in medical school, but obviously everyone forgets, and just something to prepare for, because a lot of the times, knowledge-based questions are asked into the interview. And other than that, you want to prepare yourself some questions to ask the program. So it's really nice and fortunate when you are someone who has insight into the program, and you can ask questions to them that would actually reflect what you are looking for. So have some questions that are set aside, even if they're standard ones that, if you had this resource, what kind of things would you implement? Those are very generic. It's nice if you can be more specific, like, I have an interest in research. What is your, research opportunities, or what is your research allocation in residency? What kind of funding do you have to go to conferences? These are questions that are actually beneficial to you, and the program will know about as well. Finally, last but not least, is going to be your day of the interview and how to prepare. Try and get it out of your head that you're doing an interview. take the kind of pressure off of yourself and say, what's meant for me is meant for me, and look at the interview like a chance to really just have a conversation. Yes, you're trying to impress. Yes, you've practiced. But at the end of the day, if they're going to take you, a lot of that decision comes from your overall picture. And yes, you can have a bad interview day, but your application, your demeanor, even just your friendliness can make a big role in someone's overall package of whether or not they should be accepted. Remember that residents have a say in a lot of residency programs. They want to see someone who's compatible with them, so be kind, be friendly, try and get along with them, try and mingle with the people that you see at the interviews. There used to be a social that was involved with the residency interviews, not so much now during COVID times, but maybe in the future there will be. So if you're watching this video that far in advance, I hope the future is much better than it is now. But all in all, guys, just remember to stay calm that day. Whatever happens is going to happen, and you can't change that. And a lot of the times the interview is so high pressure that people do poorly because they just let that pressure get to them. Let the pressure go. Act like you don't care, in the sense of whether you get in or not, you're going to try your best. And that's really the best advice I can give you on the day of. Take care of yourself, eat, treat yourself after the interview, enjoy. Don't frantically prepare for the next thing. Try and just relax and enjoy your time and enjoy the process, because it is something that you'll never, hopefully, have to do again as a residency program. You may have to do it again in fellowship. It's a whole nother story, but in residency, hopefully you never have to do that again. So it is a large milestone for you. Anyway, guys, I hope this was helpful. Tips for interviews in carms and residency programs. If it is, like and subscribe as always, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.